The HOA president stood at my door, 3 guards behind her, green shirts, fake badges shining. They pointed at my wife's car, said it broke their rules. But they had no idea who they were talking to. Because the woman they were about to threaten was not just my wife. She was the law itself. And what happened next changed this entire neighborhood forever. Welcome back to the HOA Society, where I share the darkest, funniest, and most unbelievable HOA stories from suburban America. My name is Daniel. I live in a quiet cul-de-sac just outside Dallas, Texas. I work as an IT consultant by day, but my nights are spent surviving the endless battles with my HOA every week. A new letter, a new fine, a new rule pulled out of nowhere. But this time, they made a mistake. They came after my wife. And what they didn't know is that she carries more authority in one badge than their entire board combined. And that's where this story begins. The night was quiet. The kind of quiet you only get in suburbia. Just the hum of sprinklers, the soft buzz of a streetlight, and the sound of a car engine cooling down in the driveway. That car was my wife's. She had just parked in front of our house. Nothing strange about it, nothing illegal. But in this neighborhood, nothing was ever simple. I remember standing at the window, watching her step out with that calm confidence she always had. She didn't rush. She didn't care who was watching. She just locked the car and walked toward the door, and that's when I saw movement from across the street, the HOA president. Her shadow appeared first, long and stretched under the streetlight, then her figure, walking fast, clutching a little folder like it was some holy book of rules. Behind her were 3 men, big, broad-shouldered, wearing those green polo shirts with HOA security stitched in yellow across the chest. Fake authority, but in this neighborhood. Hey, thought they were kings. I opened the door before they even knocked. The president smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. Her lips curled, but her eyes stayed cold. Beside her, the guards folded their arms, staring at my wife like she had committed a crime. "Good evening," the president said softly. "Your wife's car is violating HOA guidelines. We've had complaints." Complaints. I looked up and down the street. Every house was dark, curtains drawn, blinds closed. But I knew the neighbors were watching. They always were. My wife stepped beside me, her leather jacket catching the porch light. She didn't flinch. She didn't smile. She just looked at them, waiting. The president tapped her folder, flipping through papers she didn't even need. Her voice grew sharper. "Parking in front of your own home is restricted after 7 p.m., as per Section 8, subsection C. I wanted to laugh, but I didn't, because in this neighborhood, laughing at the board could cost you $100 in fines. Instead, I stayed quiet. I let my wife handle it. The tallest guard stepped forward. "Move the car, or we'll move it for you." His voice was low, a threat wrapped in fake politeness. That's when my wife smirked, just a little, almost invisible, but enough for me to catch it. I knew that look. It meant trouble for them, not for us. The president narrowed her eyes, clearly annoyed that my wife wasn't reacting the way she wanted. She leaned closer, whispering like she was delivering a secret curse. "Failure to comply will result in maximum penalty. We can escalate this matter as far as we need to." The guards straightened their shoulders, their fake badges glinting under the porch light, 3 against 1. And yet, none of them realized the danger they were walking into. My wife took a slow step forward, hands resting casually in her jacket pockets, her eyes locked on the president, then shifted to the guards, one by one. And in that silence, something shifted. For the first time, they looked uneasy. I stayed still, heart pounding, because I knew what was coming, but they didn't. The tallest guard barked again, louder this time. "Ma'am, move the vehicle right now. This is your last warning." My wife tilted her head slightly, her hair falling across her cheek. She didn't say a word, not yet. She just let them burn in the silence. And I swear, that silence felt heavier than any threat she could have spoken. The president finally snapped. "Who do you think you are?" she hissed. Her voice cracked, anger boiling just beneath the surface. "You can't ignore the HOA. No one ignores us." That was it. That was the spark, the one moment that flipped everything. My wife's lips parted, just slightly. Her voice came out calm, low, but sharp enough to cut the night air. "You really want to know who I am?" The guards froze. The president blinked, and for a second, the entire street seemed to hold its breath. My wife reached slowly into her jacket. The guards' eyes widened. One of them even stepped back, and that's where part one ends. Because in that exact moment, no one knew what she was about to pull out. Not me, not the guards, not even the president. But I'll tell you this, what she revealed next would change everything. The air grew heavier. I could hear the buzz of the streetlight above us, louder than before. Even the wind seemed to stop. As my wife's hand slipped into her jacket pocket, the guards stiffened. One of them shifted his weight, ready to move. Another took a step back, his tough expression flickering into doubt. The president's smile finally broke. Her lips pressed thin, her eyes darting nervously from my wife's hand to her face. And me? I didn't move. I just watched, because I already knew where this was going. Then, in one slow motion, my wife pulled it out. Not a weapon, not a phone, but a badge, a real badge, a golden star that caught the porch light and flashed like fire. The guards froze. The tallest one's mouth dropped open. The president blinked fast, as if her brain refused to process what her eyes were seeing. My wife held it up, calm, steady, unshaken. "Sheriff," she said softly. Not loud, not dramatic, just matter-of-fact, like she was telling them what time it was. The silence was crushing. The guards looked at each other, suddenly unsure of everything. They weren't officers. They weren't real security, just hired muscle with polo shirts and shiny name tags, and in that moment, standing in front of a real officer of the law. They looked small. The president tried to laugh, but her voice cracked. This doesn't change anything. The HOA has rules, and no one is above them." My wife tilted her head. Her smirk widened just a little. Then she stepped closer. "Rules?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but I could feel the weight in every word. "Let's talk about laws." The guards flinched. The tallest one tried to speak, but nothing came out. The president's face turned pale under the porch light. She gripped her folder tighter, as if the stack of HOA letters could shield her from the truth. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. I could see blinds shifting, eyes glowing in the dark like cats. Everyone was watching. Everyone knew. And suddenly, the board's power didn't look so big anymore. My wife lowered the badge but didn't put it away. She let it rest in her hand, visible, undeniable. Then she leaned just a little closer to the guards. "You've been trespassing on private property," she said. "You've been threatening residents and pretending to have authority you don't." The tallest guard swallowed hard. His hands twitched, like he wanted to reach for something, but thought better of it. The other two stepped back, their bravado leaking out of them like air from a balloon. The president shook her head wildly. "This neighborhood is under HOA control. We can fine. We can enforce." My wife cut her off. "You can fine," she said. "You can write letters, send warnings, but you can't threaten people. And you definitely can't send fake security to intimidate families." Her voice grew sharper. "And if you try it again, I'll treat it as harassment under county law." The guards stared at the ground. The president's breathing grew heavy, ragged. She looked like someone who had built her whole empire on sand, and was watching the tide roll in. I should have felt bad, but I didn't, because this wasn't the first time. This wasn't the first letter, the first warning, the first time they came to my door acting like rulers of some suburban kingdom. This was just the first time. They picked the wrong person to mess with. The president tried one last time. Her voice broke, but she forced the words out. "You can't scare us. We'll bring this to the board. We'll make sure you regret." My wife's laugh cut through her sentence. It wasn't loud. It wasn't kind. It was cold. It was the laugh of someone who had dealt with real criminals, real danger, real power struggles. Compared to that, an HOA president was a mosquito. "Bring it to whoever you want," my wife said. "But when you do, remember this moment. Remember how it feels to stand in front of someone who actually has authority." The guards shifted uncomfortably. The tallest one glanced at the president, waiting for her to lead, but she didn't move. She just stood there, trembling. Her little folder clutched to her chest like a shield that didn't work anymore. Finally, she turned. She didn't say another word. She just spun on her heel and walked back across the street. Her guards followed, slower, heads down, avoiding eye contact with me or my wife. I watched them go, their green shirts glowing under the streetlights, their fake badges suddenly looking cheap, almost embarrassing. My wife slipped the sheriff badge back into her jacket. Then she looked at me, and for the first time that night, she smiled. A small smile, the kind that said, "Problem solved." But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. The HOA never gives up that easy. And if tonight taught them anything, it wasn't humility, it was anger. They would regroup, they would plot, they would find another way to come after us. I leaned against the doorframe, exhaling slow. The street was quiet again, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the calm before another storm, inside. The clock ticked louder than usual. My wife poured herself a glass of water, like nothing had happened, but I couldn't shake it. The looks on their faces, the silence of the neighbors hiding in the dark, the weight of what had just been revealed. Our secret was out now. The HOA knew who my wife really was, and that meant every future battle would be different, bigger, darker. Because once people like that lose control, they don't just walk away. They fight dirtier, they claw harder. And I had the sick feeling, the worst was yet to come. The next morning, the street looked normal again. The sprinklers hissed, kids rode bikes, dogs barked behind fences. But I knew better. It wasn't normal. Not anymore. Word spreads fast in a neighborhood like ours, by sunrise. Everyone knew what happened on my porch. Everyone knew my wife wasn't just the woman with the black leather jacket. She was the sheriff. Some smiled politely when they saw us. Some waved from across the street. Too quick, too nervous. Others turned away, pretending to trim hedges or grab mail. But I could feel their eyes on us, watching, whispering. The HOA president didn't show her face that morning, but I knew she was awake. I imagined her pacing in that oversized house across the cul-de-sac, phone in hand, calling the other board members, planning her next move, because that's what people like her do. They don't forget, they don't forgive, they regroup, and they plot. I tried to brush it off. I poured my coffee, read the paper, pretended life was normal. But my wife? She was calm. She sat at the kitchen table with her badge on the counter, like a trophy. She didn't brag. She didn't gloat. She just sipped her coffee like nothing had happened. And maybe that was the scariest part. She knew how these battles worked. She had faced worse than HOA presidents. But me, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had just lit a fuse. Later that day, I saw them, the board members, 5 of them, standing in a small circle near the community mailbox, whispering, glancing at my house, lowering their voices whenever a neighbor walked by. I stepped outside to check the mail. Their heads turned instantly. The whispers stopped. The president forced a smile. It wasn't warm. It wasn't friendly. It was the smile of someone sharpening a knife. "Morning," I said casually. No one answered. They just watched me, silent, cold, like wolves waiting for the right moment to pounce. I grabbed the mail and walked back to the house, pretending not to care. But my stomach tightened with every step. That night, it started again. A letter, stuffed into our mailbox with no stamp, official looking. Bold header, notice of non-compliance. According to the letter, our trash cans were not properly stored. Funny thing was, it was Tuesday. Trash day wasn't until Thursday. The cans weren't even out yet. It was a joke, a fake violation, a warning shot. I showed it to my wife. She glanced at it once and tossed it in the drawer. "Let them play," she said. "They'll bury themselves." But I wasn't so sure, because people with that much pettiness don't just stop at letters. The following week, the fines started, one after another. Grass too long, mailbox paint fading, Christmas lights left up too long. Even though it was March, it was ridiculous, absurd. But it was working. Neighbors started whispering louder. They looked at us differently, like we were troublemakers. The HOA was turning the neighborhood against us. At night, I could feel the tension. The street was too quiet, too still. And sometimes, I swore I saw shadows near the clubhouse, men watching, waiting. disappearing into the dark when I stepped outside. One night, around midnight, I heard something. A soft scrape near the driveway. I peeked through the blindschoen. NDs. A man in a green polo crouched near my wife's car, a flashlight in one hand, a phone in the other, taking pictures. I stepped outside fast. The man jumped, dropped his flashlight. He muttered something about evidence, then ran off toward the clubhouse. I stood there barefoot, the cold concrete biting my feet, my fists clenched. They weren't just sending letters now. They were building a case, collecting shadows to turn into crimes. The next morning, another letter arrived, this one thicker. Inside was a summary of violations, pages of nonsense, fake dates, false photos, and at the bottom, a warning that if we didn't comply, they would escalate to legal action. Legal action over a parked car, over a trash can that wasn't even out, over a mailbox that didn't need paint. I slammed the papers on the table. My wife didn't flinch. She read them slowly, line by line. Then she looked at me with that calm fire in her eyes. "They want war," she said. "Fine. They'll get one." But the part that chilled me was the way she smiled when she said it. The HOA didn't realize what they were stepping into. They thought they were fighting another resident, another helpless neighbor who would bow to fines and letters, but they were picking a fight with the sheriff. And me? I was caught in the middle, between a bored drunk on power and a woman who lived and breathed justice. I couldn't decide what scared me more. That night, I heard voices outside again, whispers near the fence line. I crept to the window. 3 figures stood in the dark. One of them was the president. Her voice was sharp, angry. "They think they can scare us? They don't know who they're dealing with." The others nodded. One of them said, "We'll make them regret moving here." My blood ran cold. This wasn't about rules anymore. This was personal, and personal battles in suburbia always get ugly. I backed away from the window, heart pounding. I wanted to wake my wife, tell her what I heard, but she already knew. She always knew. She was sitting at the table again, badge in hand, polishing it with a small cloth, waiting, ready. And that's when I realized this was only the beginning. The letters kept coming, day after day, like clockwork, each one more ridiculous than the last. Our grass was half an inch too high. Our fence paint was slightly faded. Even the mailbox, they said it was tilted. I measured it myself. It wasn't tilted. But truth didn't matter here. The HOA made the rules, and the rules were whatever they wanted them to be. Neighbors stopped talking to us. Some crossed the street when they saw me. Others waved awkwardly, quick, nervous, like they didn't want to be seen on my side. The president's plan was working. She was isolating us, turning us into villains in our own neighborhood, but letters and fines were only the beginning. One night, around 11, I heard a noise outside. Not the usual crickets, not the wind through the trees, a scratching sound, metallic, sharp. I peeked through the blinds. 2 men in green polos crouched near our garage. One held a clipboard. The other had a tape measure pressed against the siding. I opened the door fast. "Hey!" I shouted. They froze, eyes wide like kids caught stealing cookies. Then they ran, not toward their cars, not toward the street, but toward the clubhouse. They didn't even try to hide anymore. They were building a case, collecting pictures, fake measurements, made-up violations. The next morning, another letter arrived, this one thicker than the others. It wasn't just a violation notice, it was a bill. Hundreds of dollars in accumulated fines, threats of legal action if we didn't pay. The words possible foreclosure were bold at the bottom. Foreclosure, over trash cans, over grass, over lies. My hands shook as I read it. This wasn't about control anymore. This was war. I showed my wife. She didn't even blink. She just placed the paper down. Calm. Steady. "Let them try," she said. "They don't know what line they're crossing." Her voice was flat. Dangerous. It scared me more than the letter. That evening, things got worse. As I pulled into the driveway after work, I noticed something strange. My wife's car sat crooked, one of the tires. Flat as paper. Not a nail. Not a puncture from the road. It was slashed. I froze, staring at the long, clean cut in the rubber. No accident, No mistake. This was intentional. I looked around. No one on the street, no kids, no dogs, no neighbors trimming lawns, just silence. But I knew someone had done this, someone who thought this was just another enforcement tactic. I called my wife out. She didn't look shocked. She crouched, inspected the tire, then stood tall, her hand brushed against the badge in her pocket. "Vandalism," she said. Her voice was calm, too calm. "They're crossing into criminal territory now." We reported it, filed the papers, but in a neighborhood like this, justice didn't come fast. The HOA had influence, connections. They thought they were untouchable. That night, we heard footsteps, not on the sidewalk, not on the street, on our lawn. I pulled back the curtain. 3 figures stood near the mailbox, whispering, pointing at our house, their faces hidden by caps. But I didn't need to see. I knew who sent them. I wanted to storm outside, but my wife put a hand on my shoulder. "Not yet," she said. Her eyes locked on them, unblinking. "Let them show their hand first." And just like that, the figures slipped back into the shadows, gone as quickly as they came. The next morning, another letter. This one wasn't typed. It was handwritten. Ugly. Sharp letters pressed deep into the paper. "Leave before it gets worse." No signature, no logo, no official stamp. Just a threat. I read it over and over, my chest tight, my fists clenched. They weren't hiding anymore. They wanted us gone, not just fined, gone at work. I couldn't focus. Every email, every call, blurred into noise. All I could see was that letter. All I could hear was the scrape of footsteps on my lawn. When I got home, things were different. The street was too quiet. The blinds in every house were closed, like the whole neighborhood was in on a secret I didn't know. Inside, my wife sat at the table again, the badge on the wood, her gun holstered at her side, waiting. She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Not fear, not anger, but readiness. "They think they're scaring us," she said. "They don't understand. Fear is my job." Her voice sent chills through me, because I knew what she meant. She wasn't just going to fight back, she was going to end this. That night, the confrontation finally came. Around midnight, headlights flashed through the blinds, 2 cars pulled up outside, doors slammed, loud footsteps crunched across the pavement, voices barked orders in the dark. I looked out. The president was there, her folder clutched tight behind her. 6 men in green polos, bigger than before, tougher. Carrying flashlights like weapons, they marched up the driveway, lined up in front of the porch, and for the first time, I felt real fear. This wasn't about letters anymore. This was force. The president raised her chin. "You have ignored every notice," she said. Her voice was sharp, trembling with anger. "You have mocked this board, and you think you're above the rules." My wife stepped forward, badge in hand, calm, unshaken. But before she could speak, one of the guards cut her off. "Badges don't mean anything here," he growled. "This is HOA property, and we make the rules." The air went still. Even the crickets stopped. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Because I knew, one wrong move, and this would explode into something none of us could take back. The night felt colder than usual. Not the kind of cold that comes from air, but the kind that sinks into your chest when danger stands at your door. 6 men in green polos blocked my driveway. Their flashlights burned against my windows, slicing through the blinds. The HOA president stood in front of them, folder clutched like it was a sword. Her voice shook with fake courage. "You have ignored every violation notice, every fine, every warning. This ends tonight." My wife stepped forward. Her leather jacket glinted under the porch light, her hand lifted slowly, calmly. Holding the badge, she didn't shout, didn't wave it around. She just let it catch the light, let it speak louder than words. The tallest guard laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "That badge doesn't matter here," he sneered. "This is HOA property. We decide what happens on this street." I could feel my chest tighten. This was different than before. This wasn't pettiness anymore. This was a line crossed. My wife didn't flinch. Her voice came out steady, low, but sharp as broken glass. "This is not your property. This is private residence. And right now, you're trespassing." The president scoffed. You think you can scare us with big words? We run this neighborhood. We can fine you, sue you, bleed you dry until you crawl out of here. My wife's smirk returned. Not playful this time. Dangerous. She took one step closer. Fine, she said softly. Let's play your game. But I don't think you'll like the ending. The guards shifted. Their bravado faltered. I could see it in their eyes. They were tough when they wrote letters, tough when they walked in packs, but standing in front of a real badge, their armor cracked. Still, the president wasn't ready to back down. She raised her voice. Boys, remove her car from the street. Two of the guards moved. One stepped toward the driveway. Flashlight bouncing. The other cracked his knuckles like he was ready for a fight. I felt my stomach drop. If they touched that car, everything would explode. My wife's hand moved fast, not for her gun, but for the radio on her belt. She pressed it once, her voice calm as ever. This is Sheriff Alvarez. Need a unit at Oakwood Lane immediately. Trespassing in progress. The guards froze mid-step. The president's face, drained of color. You wouldn't, she stammered. Her confidence cracked, her words shaky. You wouldn't actually call them. My wife's eyes narrowed. The radio crackled back. Copy that, Sheriff. Dispatching now. The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. The guards shifted nervously. The tallest one muttered, She actually called them. Another whispered, We should go. But the president snapped, No, no one moves. They're bluffing. She's bluffing. Except she wasn't. And the sound that came next proved it. Screeching tires in the distance, the faint wail of a siren, growing louder, cutting through the quiet night. The guards turned their heads, flashlights shook in their hands. The president's smile finally vanished. Her eyes darted, wide, panicked. Then the red and blue lights appeared at the corner of the street, glowing against the perfect lawns. The trimmed hedges, the neat driveways. Neighbors' blinds snapped open. Doors cracked. Eyes filled the darkness. The patrol car pulled up slow. Two deputies stepped out. Their uniforms crisp, their badges real. One rested a hand on his holster, scanning the group. The other's flashlight swept over the guards, lingering on the cheap polo shirts. Evening, the deputy said flatly. Sheriff called in trespassing. Looks like we've got a situation here. The president tried to speak first, her voice frantic, desperate. This is HOA business. We have authority here. The deputy cut her off. Authority? He repeated. Funny, because last time I checked, HOA bylaws aren't the law. The neighbors leaned out further. Whispers spread fast. Phones recorded from behind curtains. The perfect facade of the board, cracking right in front of the entire neighborhood. My wife finally spoke again, her voice carried across the street. These men came onto private property tonight, issued threats, attempted to interfere with my vehicle, all under the false claim of authority. The deputies nodded, one of them pulled out a notepad. The guards fidgeted, sweat dripping down their foreheads. Their fake badges looked smaller now, pitiful in the beam of real flashlights. The president stuttered. This is a misunderstanding. Her hands clutched the folder tighter. Her eyes darted around, searching for support, but no one stepped in. Not the guards, not the neighbors watching, no one. My wife turned her gaze on the tallest guard. What's your name? She asked. He opened his mouth, then closed it, for the first time all night. He had no words. The deputy answered for him. Doesn't matter. We'll get it when we run IDs. The guards looked at each other, trapped. The president's face twisted. Anger and fear fought for control, but before she could speak again, the deputy leaned closer. You need to understand something. Harassment like this, trespassing like this, it's not a game. You keep this up, and we'll start pressing charges. The words hung heavy in the air. The guards finally broke. One by one, they backed away, flashlights lowered, eyes downcast. The president tried to hold her ground, but without them, she looked small. Her folder slipped slightly in her grip. Her voice cracked when she whispered, You don't belong here. My wife's smirk returned, this time, sharp enough to cut glass. Neither do you, she said. The deputies stepped forward. Ma'am, sir, we'll stick around for a while tonight. Make sure things stay quiet. And with that, the guards scattered. The president stormed back across the street, her heels clicking like gunshots on the pavement. The neighbors disappeared behind curtains again, but I knew they were still watching, still whispering. The patrol car idled at the curb, its lights painting the neighborhood in red and blue. And for the first time, the HOA's power looked fragile, like a balloon one pin away from bursting. Inside, I sat at the table, trying to breathe. My wife sat, her badge down again, her fingers tapped it lightly, her eyes still sharp. "They'll come back," she said. "They always do." And I believed her, because people like that don't learn lessons. They only learn grudges. The next morning, the street was quiet again, but not the normal kind of quiet. It was heavy, uncomfortable, like the silence after a storm that everyone knows isn't really over. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Some crossed their lawns instead of walking past my house. Others whispered in clusters near mailboxes. Their words carried just enough for me to hear the tone, not the details, but I knew what they were saying. The HOA had lost face last night, and people like that don't forgive humiliation. By noon, another letter arrived, different this time, not typed, not printed on fancy HOA stationery, just a plain white envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 4 words written in black marker. "We don't forget." I read it 3 times. The letters were jagged, pressed deep into the paper like whoever wrote it was shaking with rage. No signature, no logo, no official notice, just a threat. I handed it to my wife. She didn't flinch. She slid it into the same drawer where the other violations sat, but her jaw tightened. Her eyes sharpened. "They're done playing by their own rules," she said quietly. "Now they're playing dirty." And she was right. That night, the floodlights in our backyard flickered off. Not a power outage, not a blown fuse. The wires had been cut. I found the clean slice the next morning near the fence. Deliberate, calculated, the same day. Our mailbox door was ripped off, the metal bent like someone had kicked it in. Letters scattered across the street, bills, flyers. And another note, this one scrawled on notebook paper. "Move out." It wasn't just harassment anymore. It was psychological warfare. I started waking up at night to noises outside. Footsteps crunching gravel, whispers fading into the dark. One night I found an egg smashed against our garage door, the yolk dripping down like a warning. The next morning, we got another fine, garage door unsanitary. They weren't even trying to hide it, they were attacking. Then fining us for the damage they caused. My wife stayed calm, too calm. Every night she sat at the kitchen table, badge beside her, gun on her hip, waiting, listening. Her patience made me nervous, because patience like that wasn't peace, it was a storm waiting to hit back. But me? I wasn't calm. I started checking windows twice before bed. I left lights on all night. I jumped at every sound, every shadow. And the worst part? The neighbors saw it all, and they chose silence. Curtains fluttered when I stepped outside, doors shut when I walked past. Some looked at me with pity, others with annoyance, like I was the problem, not the people tormenting us. The HOA was winning, not through power, but through isolation. They were turning the entire neighborhood into their army. Even if the neighbors never lifted a finger, then came the meeting. A folded flyer stuffed under my door, mandatory HOA assembly. Friday night. Clubhouse. Attendance required for all residents. The word mandatory glared at me. I knew what it meant. It wasn't a meeting, it was a trial. And we were the defendants. Friday came fast. The clubhouse glowed with light. Cars filled the lot. Neighbors streamed inside like it was a school play. But when I stepped through the doors, I felt the weight of every eye on me. The president sat at the front table, her folder stacked high, her smile thin. Bitter, her guards flanked her on both sides, green polos stretched tight across their shoulders, their eyes locked on us like hawks. The room buzzed with whispers until she stood. She tapped her gavel against the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the room. "Tonight," she said coldly, "we address a threat to this community." Her eyes locked on me, then on my wife. Her voice sharpened with every word. "Some residents believe they are above the rules, above the HOA, above the very foundation of our neighborhood." The crowd murmured, some nodded, others frowned, but no one spoke. The president slammed her folder onto the table. Violations have been documented, fines ignored, disrespect shown not only to this board, but to every family here who follows the rules. This cannot continue. She raised a paper high. Tonight, we vote. Do we pursue legal action? Do we escalate fines? Do we move toward removal of this family from our neighborhood? The room erupted in whispers, some shocked, some eager, some already nodding in agreement. I clenched my fists. This wasn't a meeting. It was an ambush. But before I could speak, my wife stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout. She just spoke clear, steady, every word landing like a hammer. You want to talk about rules? Fine. Let's talk about laws. The room stilled. The president froze, eyes narrowing. My wife reached into her jacket, pulled out the badge, held it up for everyone to see. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones lifted, cameras clicked, neighbors leaned forward, whispering louder. This badge doesn't make me above the law, my wife said. It makes me the law. And let me be clear. Trespassing, vandalism, harassment, those aren't HOA matters. Those are crimes. And I can assure you, crimes don't end in fines. They end in handcuffs. The guard shifted nervously. The president's face twisted in rage. You can't threaten us with your badge, she snapped. This is our community. We decide who belongs. My wife's smirk returned. Then maybe you'll enjoy explaining that to a judge, she said calmly. The crowd erupted again. Some cheered quietly under their breath. Others shook their heads, muttering, but no one left. No one stopped watching. The president slammed her gavel again. This isn't over, she shouted. Her voice cracked. This board will not be intimidated. But her words didn't sound strong anymore. They sounded desperate. The meeting ended in chaos. Neighbors whispering louder than ever. Some looking at us with new respect. Others with new fear. Outside. As we walked back to the car, I felt the shift. The neighborhood wasn't united anymore. Lines were being drawn, sides chosen, and in the middle of it all was us as we drove home. My wife stared out the window. Her voice was quiet, but sharp. They're cornered now, and cornered animals bite. I gripped the wheel tighter because I knew she was right. The HOA wasn't finished. They were just getting started. After the meeting, the neighborhood changed forever. People stopped pretending to be neutral. Some nodded at us now. Small gestures of respect. Others turned their backs harder than before. The cul-de-sac felt split in two, one side whispering with support, the other whispering with hate. But the board wasn't whispering. They were planning. The president's pride had been shattered in front of everyone, her security humiliated by real deputies, her threats laughed off by a sheriff's badge. She couldn't let that stand. And I knew. She would strike again. Days passed in uneasy silence. No letters, no fines, no late-night footsteps on the lawn. At first it felt like peace. But in my gut, I knew it was the quiet before the storm. Then, it happened. It was a Thursday night. I was dozing on the couch, the TV humming in the background. My wife was upstairs finishing paperwork. That's when I heard it. A loud bang against the garage door, then another, then a third. I jumped up, heart racing, pulled the curtain back just in time to see shadows scatter across the driveway. 3 men in green polos, laughing as they ran toward the clubhouse. When I opened the garage, my stomach dropped. Spray paint covered the door in ugly black letters. Get out. The paint dripped down the metal, sticky and fresh. The smell burned my nose. It wasn't just vandalism this time. It was a message. I called my wife down. She stared at it for a long time. No words, no sigh, just silence. Then she turned to me. They've crossed, said the line, she said softly. And in that moment, I saw it. Not anger, not fear, but finality. The next morning, deputies arrived. Photos were taken, statements written, but the board denied everything. No proof, the president said with a smug smile. Could have been anyone. She even had the nerve to hand me a letter as we left. Notice of violation. Garage door unsightly. $200 fine. The arrogance was almost impressive, almost, but they didn't know what was coming next. That weekend, my wife made her move. She gathered every letter, every fake violation, every threatening note stuffed into our mailbox. She even pulled security camera footage from the neighbors who quietly supported us. Clips of guards sneaking across lawns, clips of eggs thrown at houses, clips of wires cut near fences. It was all there, proof stacked higher than the president's folder of lies. And then, the final nail. The spray paint wasn't just random. Deputies had pulled prints from the paint can left behind in the bushes, and those prints belonged to one of the HOA guards. The case was building. The sheriff wasn't just my wife now. She was the storm they couldn't stop. But the board didn't back down. The next Monday, we got a notice taped to our door, a formal letter this time, signed by every member of the board. We are pursuing foreclosure proceedings. I laughed out loud when I read it. Foreclosure, over unsightly property, over paint they sprayed themselves, over rules they made up in the middle of the night. But my wife didn't laugh. She just tucked the paper into the stack and said one word: good. The following week, the board held another emergency meeting at the clubhouse. But this time, deputies were already waiting when the president arrived. They didn't ask questions. They didn't entertain excuses. They served papers, formal charges of harassment, trespassing, vandalism, conspiracy. The president's face went pale. Her guards shifted nervously. Neighbors gasped and filmed on their phones. The perfect mask of power cracked wide open for everyone to see. And when the deputies cuffed the tallest guard, the crowd erupted. Not cheers, not shouts, just whispers spreading like wildfire. The board wasn't untouchable anymore. They were human, and humans bleed when they fall. The president tried one last desperate move. She turned to the crowd. "This is a witch hunt," she screamed. "She's using her badge to destroy us. She's corrupt." But the words didn't land. The neighbors had seen enough. They saw the notes, the fines, the late-night stunts, the spray paint on my garage door. Her mask was gone, and without the mask, she was just another bully caught in the act. The board fractured that night. 2 members resigned on the spot. Another slipped out the back door. By the end of the week, only the president remained, and even she couldn't stand tall anymore. The HOA still existed on paper, but its power was gone. Letters stopped arriving. Fines stopped stacking. The guards never came back. The silence that followed was different this time. It wasn't heavy. It was relief. The neighbors started talking to us again, slowly at first, a wave across the street, a nod by the mailbox. One even apologized quietly. We should have spoken up sooner. But the damage was done. The neighborhood would never be the same. The illusion of control had shattered. And every time someone walked past my house, they glanced just a little longer at the porch where the sheriff had stood her ground, the porch where the HOA lost its crown. And me? I learned something that night. HOAs don't run on rules. They run on fear. And once fear is gone, all that's left is paper. But deep down, I can't shake one thought. The president may be gone, her guards may have been humiliated, but people like that, they don't disappear. They wait, they plot, they find new ways to crawl back into power. And when they do, they come back meaner than before. So let me ask you, if your HOA president was taken down in handcuffs, would you finally feel safe in your own neighborhood, or would you still sleep with one eye open, waiting for the next battle? Tell me in the comments, because I think this war in suburbia never truly ends.